All right, friend, come closer. Let's talk about something real. A lie might sprint ahead fueled by urgency and fear, but the truth is a marathon runner. It might seem like it's lagging, but trust me, it's building endurance. You're here because you're ready to witness what happens when someone's mask slips right off their face. Get ready. For ages, this person, let's call them what they are, an immature manipulator. They've been crafting stories, muddying the waters, ensnaring others, all while flashing a seemingly untouchable smile. But the truth, it doesn't need smoke and mirrors. It just needs time to calmly, inexorably unravel everything. And friend, that time is now. Ever notice how much energy lying takes? Studies even show that keeping a massive secret is like a drain on your inner resources. It literally rewires your brain, upping your stress levels. This is why chronic liars often seem restless, twitchy, drained. They're battling themselves, a 24/7 war against their own hidden darkness. And this one, they've been shadow boxing with their conscience for so long, they're practically screaming for someone, anyone, to see the truth. Have you been there? Isn't it ironic the people who shout loudest about having nothing to hide are often the ones with a basement full of skeletons throwing a rave? And in this case, those skeletons are tired of the party being kept secret. They're clanging, rattling, practically bursting through the floorboards. Buckle up. We're about to pull back the curtain and expose why this manipulator is on their knees whispering, "Please don't tell them." Because behind all the drama, there's a raw truth: they lied. Because the real truth would make them feel small. Here's the heart of it. Their entire identity is a stage production: lights, makeup, props, a meticulously rehearsed script. But behind the facade, they're small, insecure. The truth about who they really are would strip them of the illusion they've painstakingly constructed. And that, my friend, is precisely why they fought so hard to keep it hidden. You see, it's not just about getting away with something, it's about crafting a bigger, better version of themselves, a version that can stand beside you without feeling inadequate. Lies give liars a temporary boost, but they weaken them over time. Once the mask comes off, the real person looks tiny compared to the persona they've invented. That's a shrinking they can't bear. Can you imagine that? When someone is constantly performing, they're terrified of being ordinary. They can't stomach the thought that people might see them as flawed, vulnerable, or worst of all, unimpressive. So they use lies as scaffolding, desperately hoping no one will notice how fragile the structure really is. But truth has a way of stripping scaffolding bare, leaving behind only a shaky foundation. They begged people not to tell you because they knew that the moment you saw the real them, the whole charade would crumble. The irony is that the very thing they feared most, being exposed as smaller than they pretended, is what makes their downfall so deafening. These weren't harmless fibs, they were identity lies. Lies meant to inflate themselves to appear more important, more powerful, more confident than they ever were. Now that the truth is out, they've shrunk to their real size in front of everyone. This kind of shrinking doesn't just damage their reputation, it crushes their ego. When the mask falls, the people who once believed in their image don't just lose respect, they feel betrayed. And once someone feels betrayed, they never see you the same way again. That's the irreversible punishment of the liar. Not only do they diminish in the eyes of others, but they also can't stretch themselves back up. The truth doesn't give liars the luxury of reclaiming what they've lost. Now here's the really dangerous part. Their secret wasn't just hidden. It was weaponized. It wasn't simply that they had something they wanted to conceal. The real depth of their immaturity is that they didn't stop at concealment. They twisted that secret into a weapon. I want you to think about that for a second. Have you ever been manipulated? Instead of owning up to their truth, they built a shield out of lies and then swung it at you like a sword. This exposure hits differently because this isn't just about someone hiding their dirt. It's about someone deliberately using that dirt to smear you so their own mess stayed invisible. When people weaponize secrets, it means they're not only afraid of the truth, but also actively creating distractions. They push false narratives, stir up drama, and redirect suspicion so no one ever turns the spotlight on them. That's why you've likely found yourself under attack at times for things you didn't do, words you didn't say, or actions that never belonged to you. The whole purpose was deflection. As long as others were busy doubting you, no one would look closely enough at them. That's how liars survive. They don't just lie. They build entire campaigns around those lies. The begging that's happening now is proof of how fragile that campaign really was. When the truth surfaces, all of the energy they spent projecting, protecting, and accusing suddenly collapses. The mask doesn't just fall off, it shatters. With that shattering comes the exposure that they were never as strong, never as righteous, and never as secure as they pretended to be. The very secret they buried becomes the very thing that validates you. That's why they don't want you to know. It's not just about saving face, it's about the fact that once you're informed, the whole story flips and their credibility evaporates. The cruelest irony is this: in trying to weaponize their secret, they gave it more power than it ever would have had on its own. If they had simply confessed or owned up, it might have faded over time. But because they turned it into ammunition, it now comes back with double the force. Exposure doesn't just reveal their weakness, it exposes the strategy they used against you. Once people see that there's no coming back, their secret becomes their downfall, and the weapon they forged becomes the one thing that strikes them down the hardest. But now let's get into something deeper. Immaturity isn't age, it's emotional bankruptcy. Immaturity has nothing to do with the candles on your birthday cake, and this liar is living proof. Someone can grow older, collect birthdays, and still be stuck in the same emotional quicksand they were sinking in as a teenager. That's exactly what this secret exposes, not just their dishonesty, but their arrested development. Do you ever feel like someone you know doesn't truly understand you? They may dress like an adult, speak like an adult, and even hold positions that demand responsibility. But when it comes to handling truth, accountability, and consequences, they're still a child in disguise. You see it in the way they handle problems. Instead of confronting issues head-on, they run to lies like a child runs to excuses. They point fingers, play the victim, and cry for protection whenever the spotlight turns on them. That's why they're begging people not to tell you. It's the same energy as a child begging a sibling not to reveal what they broke before the parents get home. It's not wisdom guiding them. It's fear of being caught. The sad part is that immaturity is a choice. Growth requires honesty, self-reflection, and accountability, but those things feel too heavy for someone who refuses to evolve. Instead of building the strength to carry the weight of truth, they shrink back into games, manipulation, and avoidance. They don't realize that by doing this, they keep themselves locked in the same cycle, constantly lying, constantly hiding, constantly panicking. While they stay stuck, everyone around them keeps moving forward. Their immaturity also reveals itself in how they underestimate others. They think no one will catch on, as if people aren't capable of connecting dots. That's the arrogance of a child believing their tricks are smarter than the adults around them. What are you going to do about it? When their secret comes out, it doesn't just reveal what they were hiding. It also reveals how foolish they were to think they could keep the act going forever. At the core, this isn't just about lying, it's about refusing to grow up. A mature person accepts that being human means making mistakes and owning them. This liar wanted the benefits of being seen as grown without the responsibility of actually being one. Now their secret shows everyone what you already sensed, that behind all their noise, they never truly matured. Once that truth is clear, the mask of adulthood they've worn no longer fools anyone. Their image was built on borrowed faces, and that's why exposure terrifies them more than anything else. Everything they presented to the world wasn't rooted in who they truly were, but in what they copied from others. Their confidence was borrowed, their style was borrowed, even the way they spoke, moved, and carried themselves was stitched together from fragments of other people's authenticity. When you strip all of that away, there's nothing left. That's the secret they're terrified of being revealed. Beneath the mask, they've never had a real identity of their own. Have you seen that? This is why they cling so desperately to their lies. It's not just about hiding mistakes, it's about survival. They created a character that people respected, envied, or admired, but it wasn't them. It was a patchwork of everyone else they observed. That's why you probably noticed inconsistencies, moments when they slipped and didn't quite match the role they were playing. Their identity isn't something they live from within. It's something they rehearse, like lines from a script. Like any performance, it eventually breaks when the lights get too bright. What makes this worse is how they treated people in the process. Instead of being inspired by others and growing from it, they stole mannerisms, borrowed words, and mimicked behaviors to craft an image. Then they used that image as if it was authentic, demanding recognition and respect for something that was never theirs. It's like wearing stolen clothes and pretending you bought them with your own money. They wanted the glory of originality without the work of self-discovery. Exposure is fatal to someone like this because the truth isn't just embarrassing. It erases them. If the lies fall, if the secrets are revealed, then the entire personality they built collapses. Without the mask, they don't just look weak, they vanish, and that's the scariest part for them, realizing that the person they sold to the world doesn't actually exist. They beg others to keep their secret because once it's out, they're forced to face themselves in the mirror for the first time, and that reflection is empty. They never had a foundation, never had a center. Everything was borrowed, and when the truth comes out, the borrowed faces return to their owners, leaving them with nothing but the raw, unpolished self they spent years running from. But there's more. Their secret isn't just dirty, it's fragile. That's the part most people miss. When we hear the word secret, we think of something scandalous, something shameful that someone doesn't want others to know. For this immature liar, it runs deeper than that. Their secret isn't only about embarrassment, it's about fragility. Their entire image, their reputation, their sense of power is being held up by one shaky piece of information that cannot withstand even the smallest touch of truth. Do you get a sense of that in their behavior? It's like a tower built on a glass base. The moment the glass cracks, everything comes crashing down. That's why they beg, because they know how little it would take for the whole act to collapse. They've spent so long presenting themselves as solid, untouchable, or respectable that they can't afford even the smallest fracture. The fragility of their secret is what makes it so powerful over them. It's not the size of the secret that matters. It's the fact that their entire false identity depends on it staying hidden. If it comes out, it doesn't just expose a detail, it dismantles the whole performance. The irony is that fragile secrets carry more weight than strong ones. A strong person could admit a fault, survive the blow, and rebuild, but a fragile liar cannot. They can't risk exposure because they don't have the strength or stability to recover from it. That's why the begging is so desperate. It's not about keeping a little shame tucked away, it's about keeping their entire self-image from shattering into pieces. What makes it worse is that fragility always shows itself. You can hear it in the nervousness of their tone, see it in the inconsistency of their actions, feel it in the energy they carry. They walk around paranoid, always watching, always controlling, always calculating what people know or don't know, because deep down they know one wrong word in the wrong ear is enough to destroy everything they've built. This is the punishment of living on lies. You can never be at peace. You have to protect your secret like a fragile glass jar, constantly worried about who might drop it. The very act of protecting it drains you until you collapse under your own weight. That's why they beg. It's not about the dirtiness of the secret, it's about the fragility of their entire existence once it comes out. They trained others to lie for them, and that's what makes their game so poisonous. Begging people not to tell you wasn't just a moment of panic. It was a strategy. They know the power of manipulation lies in numbers, so they didn't just keep the secret to themselves. They recruited. They pulled others into their orbit, whispering, pleading guilt, tripping and twisting emotions until those around them felt responsible for protecting their false image. By doing that, they made their lie bigger than themselves. It became a group project. Have you ever been in a similar position? This is how immaturity disguises itself as control. Instead of owning their truth, they spread their fear like a virus. They turned friends, family, or associates into unwilling accomplices by making them carry the weight of their lie. It's never just, please don't tell. It's, if you tell, you'll hurt me. If you tell, you'll ruin everything. If you tell, you'll be the bad one. So people who would normally stand on honesty get trapped into silence, not because they agree with the lie, but because they've been emotionally cornered. That's not desperation. That's training. What's worse is that over time, these recruits start to act out the lie for them. They repeat false narratives, they defend the liar's name, they cover gaps in the story. Without realizing it, they become co-conspirators carrying guilt that isn't even theirs to begin with. This is why exposure cuts so deep, because when the truth surfaces, it doesn't just reveal the liar, it exposes everyone who carried water for them. The shame spreads wider than the original secret. Anyone who shields a liar becomes just as guilty. They may not have told the original lie, but they became guardians of it. They chose protection over honesty. They chose to keep you in the dark instead of standing up to manipulation. That's why their begging is so dangerous. It doesn't just corrupt their own soul. It stains the people around them too. The liar knows this. That's why they lean on others so heavily, because if the lie belongs to more than one person, it's harder to expose. When the truth finally breaks through, the whole network collapses. Every co-signer, every protector, every accomplice gets dragged into the fallout. Suddenly, it's not just one liar standing exposed. It's an entire circle revealed for what they really are. Their panic is proof. You were always right. For the longest time, they worked overtime to convince you and everyone else that you were imagining things. They rolled their eyes, laughed in your face, and called you paranoid or dramatic. They wanted you to doubt yourself so badly that you'd bury your suspicions and question your own discernment. Does that sound familiar? Now their desperate begging exposes the truth they tried so hard to hide. You saw them clearly from the very beginning. Panic is a confession without words. It's the body giving up the truth the mouth refuses to say, their shaky tone, their sudden silence, their frantic attempts to silence others. It all screams louder than their old denials ever did, because people who have nothing to hide don't beg. People who are secure don't scramble. People who mocked you for making things up don't fall apart when the very thing you imagine threatens to come out. This is where their immaturity is most obvious. A grown, secure person would have admitted the truth, faced the consequences, and moved on. An immature liar doubles down, digs deeper, and tries to paint you as unstable for even noticing. Your intuition was never wrong. It was simply ahead of its time. You caught the scent of their falsehood long before the evidence rose to the surface, and now that the panic has set in, you've been vindicated without even needing to say a word. Can you feel that? Their desperation also reveals something deeper. They always knew you weren't blind. Every laugh at your expense, every attempt to discredit you was fear in disguise. They feared the way you looked at them, the way you noticed inconsistencies, the way you didn't just take things at face value. They knew you saw through the mask. Now that the mask is slipping, the panic is confirmation that you were never paranoid. You were perceptive. The beautiful irony is that their attempt to make you doubt yourself has backfired. The very panic they're drowning in now is the loudest testimony that your spirit was aligned with truth all along. They may have mocked you then, but today their trembling is the evidence that you were always right. Their lies were a mirror of their envy. And that's what makes the whole thing so twisted. Every time they spread a false story about you, it wasn't random. It was a reflection of their own hidden battles. What they accused you of was never really about you. It was about them trying to push their dirt onto your name so they could breathe easier under their own mess. They projected their weaknesses onto you, hoping people would look at you instead of looking too closely at them. This is the psychology of envy. It doesn't just sit quietly in someone's chest. It leaks out through accusations, gossip, and character assassination. They couldn't stand the qualities in you that highlighted what they lacked in themselves. If you were confident, they called you arrogant. If you were pure-hearted, they labeled you fake. If you were disciplined, they accused you of being controlling. It was never about who you really were. It was about how your presence reminded them of everything they weren't. The root of this envy was their secret. That hidden truth was eating them alive, making them insecure, restless, and constantly measuring themselves against you. They thought tearing you down would give them relief, but it only deepened their jealousy, because no matter how many lies they told, the truth within them didn't go away. They weren't trying to ruin you as much as they were trying to silence the reflection of themselves they saw whenever they looked your way. The very things they tried to accuse you of became a roadmap to their own downfall. Their words were confessions disguised as insults. They told on themselves every time they spoke about you. That's why their lies always had a strange edge of desperation. They weren't just attacking you. They were leaking pieces of their own hidden story. Now that their secret is exposed, the connection is clear. Everyone can see that the things they threw at you were never rooted in truth. They were rooted in envy. They weren't describing you, they were describing themselves. The cruel trap of envy, it doesn't destroy the one it targets. It exposes the one who carries it. Their lies only confirmed what was rotting inside them, and now that truth has nowhere left to hide. Their hidden truth dismantles their authority, and that's why they're shaking. For so long they thrived on the illusion of control, having influence over conversations, dictating narratives, and playing the role of someone others should listen to. They positioned themselves as a leader, a voice of reason, someone whose opinions carried weight. All of that was standing on a false foundation. Their secret was the one crack they hoped no one would ever see, because once it's revealed, their entire authority collapses. You can't govern others when the truth proves you can't even govern yourself. Authority only holds power when it's backed by integrity. The moment people see that the one giving advice, making judgments, or trying to guide others is hiding a truth that contradicts their image, the respect instantly evaporates. That's what this liar is facing. Their secret didn't just expose a personal flaw, it dismantled the credibility they used to keep people in line. What makes it worse is how much they relied on that authority. They didn't just want to be heard, they wanted to be obeyed. Their sense of self-worth was tied to being seen as influential, powerful, and respected. Influence built on deception is fragile, and exposure turns it to dust. Now the same voice that once silenced others carries no weight because people can't take seriously someone who couldn't practice what they preached. Truth doesn't just strip away their pedestal, it flips the script. The very people they once controlled now look at them with disappointment, even disgust. The authority they used to demand now turns into suspicion. Instead of being trusted, they're questioned. Instead of being followed, they're avoided, and that's a punishment far greater than any public embarrassment, because once authority is dismantled, it rarely returns. This is the cost of living in lies. You might win influence for a season, but when the truth comes, it doesn't just reveal who you are, it repositions you in everyone's eyes. Once people see that you couldn't manage your own hidden life, they stop giving you permission to manage theirs. That's the final collapse of false authority, not just being exposed, but being permanently dethroned. Immaturity always shows itself in what a person fears most, and with this liar it couldn't be clearer. A mature person, no matter how difficult it is, learns to face the consequences of their actions. They understand that mistakes are part of life, and growth comes from accountability. This liar refuses to step into that space. Instead of standing up to truth, they hide from it. Instead of taking responsibility, they manipulate. Instead of owning their choices, they beg others to cover for them. That's not adulthood. That's arrested development. Fear of truth is the most childish trait a person can carry into adulthood. Children are afraid of things that don't change when you face them. A child is terrified of the dark. Even though turning on the light doesn't make the dark itself dangerous, it just reveals what was always there. That's exactly how this liar operates. They're terrified of reality, not because it's going to kill them, but because it's going to expose them. Exposure feels unbearable to someone who has built their life on pretending. What makes their fear stand out is how irrational it is. Mature people understand that truth, no matter how painful, will eventually set things straight. It clears the air, it allows for healing, and it lets people move forward. An immature person can't process that. To them, truth is the enemy because it removes their power to control the narrative. It leaves them naked, without excuses, without distractions, and so they flail, manipulate, and beg others to shield them. This childish fear also reveals why they've been so destructive. When you're constantly running from truth, you hurt anyone who gets too close to it. You lie on people, you twist stories, you lash out, all to keep your secret buried. That's what makes immaturity so toxic. It doesn't just stunt the liar, it spills over and poisons everyone around them. Their fear is the loudest testimony about who they really are. A grown, grounded person can look truth in the eye and deal with it. This liar can't. They hide like a child, pulling the covers over their head, hoping reality will go away. Immaturity isn't about years lived. It's about the courage, or lack of it, to stand in the light. They knew the secret would resurrect your name, and that's why their begging reached a fever pitch. It wasn't only about keeping their own mask intact. It was about keeping you buried under the false image they worked so hard to paint of you. They understood something deep. The moment you discovered the truth, everything they built against you would collapse. And in that collapse, your reputation would rise higher than before. Their secret isn't just about them, it's tied directly to your vindication. For years, they tried to make you look like the problem. They twisted narratives, sowed doubt, and used their lies as smoke to cover their own tracks, and while they thought they were protecting themselves, What they were really doing was holding down your name, dimming your light so theirs could shine brighter. The truth has a way of turning on the very person who tries to bury it. Once it comes out, the whole story reverses. You're no longer the suspect in their lies. You're the proof that their entire story was false. That's the part that terrifies them most. Exposure doesn't just reveal their weakness. It elevates you. It proves what you've been saying all along, that your discernment was sharp, that your character was intact, and that the accusations against you never held weight. The very truth they wanted to bury is the one that clears your name, and that resurrection is powerful because it doesn't just restore you. It multiplies your credibility. People realize you stood with integrity even when lied on, and that revelation is impossible to undo. Their desperation shows how much they feared your vindication. They could live with protecting their image, but they couldn't live with you being seen as right all along. That's why they begged others not to tell you, because once you had that knowledge, their control ended. The game was over. Your silence would no longer be a sign of weakness. It would be proof of strength, and their words, which once carried weight, would now be viewed as empty and manipulative. Their secret was never just theirs to hold. It was the key to unlocking your justice, your honor, and your restoration. It's out, and the story doesn't just expose them, it resurrects you. Lies rot from the inside before they ever collapse outside, and this liar is living proof of it. You can hear it in their voice, see it in their behavior, and feel it in the way they move through life. The begging they're doing now is only the visible part of a much deeper decay. Long before the truth spreads publicly, it's already been eating them alive privately. That's the hidden cost of lies. They corrode a person from within until there's nothing stable left to stand on. Every lie told has to be carried, and carrying lies is heavy work. You have to remember who you said it to, what details you added, how you twisted the story. You have to constantly check yourself, making sure you don't slip up or contradict what you've already said. That mental and emotional juggling act burns energy, and over time it drains the liar's soul. They don't sleep well, they don't think clearly, they live in paranoia, constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's not the truth that breaks them, it's the weight of maintaining the lie. You see the cracks before the exposure ever happens, the begging, the frantic attempts to silence people, the overreactions when certain topics come up. It's all evidence that the rot has already set in. They are deteriorating because fear is eating them alive from the inside out. Fear of being caught, fear of being seen for who they really are, fear of losing the image they worked so hard to build. They don't understand that truth doesn't need to lift a finger against them. Truth doesn't chase them down. It doesn't throw punches, it doesn't scream. It simply stands, and their fear of it does all the damage. They're the ones unraveling their own image, panicking themselves into exposure, collapsing under the very pressure they created. By the time the truth finally surfaces, they're already hollowed out. The begging isn't just desperation. It's a confession that the lies have rotted them to the core. That's the cruel irony of deception. It doesn't destroy you when it's revealed. It destroys you while you're still trying to hide it. This liar, they're already falling apart long before anyone else sees the full truth. Their secret exposes who they really worship, and that's the part most people don't see. On the surface, it just looks like someone desperate to protect their image, but when you peel it back, it's much deeper than that. A liar's secret always reveals their altar. The thing they place above God, above integrity, above truth, whether it's image, lust, money, power, or validation. Whatever they're begging to keep hidden is the God they've been serving in silence, and that's why their immaturity isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. A person who worships image will do anything to protect it. They'll bend reality, manipulate stories, and sell out relationships just to keep people believing they're flawless. Someone who worships lust will wreck entire lives to hide their appetite, protecting their desires at all costs. A person who worships money will compromise morals, backstab, and lie just to look wealthy or powerful. And someone addicted to validation will beg strangers to co-sign their falsehoods because they can't survive without applause. The begging isn't just desperation, it's devotion. They're pleading for others to protect their idol. That's why their downfall cut so deep. Their secret wasn't only a personal failing, it was their shrine. They were bowing to it, feeding it, and sacrificing others on its altar. It doesn't just make them look bad, it unmasks the truth about what they've been serving all along. It proves their loyalties never belonged to God, truth, or righteousness. They were loyal to their false God. What makes it even clearer is how much energy they poured into keeping it hidden. Real worship is shown in what people give their time, strength, and sacrifices to. They sacrificed peace, relationships, and even their own freedom of mind just to keep this secret safe. That kind of devotion shows you what truly sits on the throne of their heart. Their immaturity runs deeper than childish games. It isn't just about lying to save face. It's about living under the rule of idols instead of truth. When someone fears exposure more than they fear God, it's proof of who they've really been serving, and in the end, no false god has ever saved anyone from the collapse that follows. Their begging is just another prayer to an idol that cannot answer. Exposure forces them to see what you already saw. And that is the punishment they never prepared for. You were never fooled by the surface they presented. From the beginning, you noticed the cracks in their mask, the nervous energy, the contradictions that slipped through their stories. You didn't need to dig for evidence. Your discernment spoke louder than anything they said. That's what unsettled them most, the fact that you could stand in front of them and see straight through what everyone else applauded. Now that their secret is out, they can't run from it anymore. The lies have collapsed and they're left standing in the same light you've always seen them in. That's the most terrifying part for them, not that people found out, but that you were proven right all along. Their desperation wasn't just about silencing others, it was about avoiding the confirmation that your clarity was never wrong. There's a unique kind of humiliation in realizing someone saw your truth long before you admitted it yourself. Their panic feels louder than the exposure itself. They're not only dealing with the fallout of their secret, they're being forced to look into the very mirror they avoided, the one you've been holding with your unshakable discernment. It cuts them because it proves their entire fight against you was pointless. Every time they mocked you, dismissed you, or called you paranoid, they were really fighting against the accuracy of your vision. What's happening now isn't just exposure, it's confrontation. They're being confronted with themselves, stripped of the illusions they clung to and forced to acknowledge the accuracy of the eyes that saw them clearly all along. That's why they begged people not to tell you, because your knowing hits harder than the crowd's judgment. Others may gossip and move on, but you stand as the living witness that discernment doesn't lie. They were never just afraid of exposure. They were afraid of your validation. Afraid that the world would finally see them exactly the way you always did. Exposure isn't just about revealing their secret. It's about making them face the reality that your eyes never once blinked in the face of their disguise. This entire saga proves one thing: lies always betray their owners before truth even needs to speak. Every mask they stitched together was fragile, every borrowed face temporary, and every secret they clung to was nothing more than an idol they sacrificed themselves for. The begging, the panic, the manipulation, it all points to one undeniable reality: they were never as powerful as they pretended to be. Their image was rented, their authority borrowed, and their influence propped up by fear. Truth cracked through, and all of it came tumbling down. The beauty of this moment is that you don't need to fight, prove, or defend anything. Exposure has already done the heavy lifting. They are left to face themselves while you stand vindicated in the clarity you carried all along. What once felt like a battle of words has turned into a silent courtroom where the evidence speaks for itself. And the evidence is on your side. This isn't just their downfall, it's your rise. Every lie they crafted to bury you has become the shovel uncovering their own hidden mess. Every secret they begged to keep buried has become the very thing restoring your name. Their immaturity has been put on display, and their false gods have failed them publicly. Now the world sees what you always knew. Your discernment wasn't paranoia. It was prophecy. Stand tall. You don't need to clap back. You don't need revenge. You don't even need to explain. Their desperation has already written the ending for you, and the ending is simple: truth wins always. Quietly, steadily, and with a permanence no lie can erase. If this resonated, then share this with someone who needs to hear it, because helping them understand this strengthens their resolve to avoid deception and immaturity. You can share the lesson about truth and its impact. Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. Let them paint you as the villain while destiny casts you as the hero. This is the beautiful paradox in which the chosen ones reside. The quieter you become, the more amplified their falsehoods echo. Yet the louder their deceptions roar, the brighter your truth illuminates, often without you uttering a single word in defense. Here's a stark reality check. The majority perceive not who you truly are, but rather a reflection of themselves. Their envy, insecurities, ignorance, or controlling tendencies function as distorted lenses through which they view your spirit. And in their attempts to define you, they inadvertently reveal the depths of their own inner landscapes. Perhaps you find yourself perplexed, wondering why your name surfaces in conversations you've never been a part of, why some are convinced you harbor an air of superiority, or why you're labeled as cold when you've simply transcended chaotic environments. But let's be candid. Many of those who misunderstand you wouldn't endure 5 minutes navigating the complexities of your life. They misinterpret your composed nature as arrogance, your healthy boundaries as disrespect, and your unique essence as rebellion. Meanwhile, you're simply striving to navigate each day without unleashing your inner strength against those cloaked in negativity. The revelation that follows will astound them. Your genuine power lies not in defending your reputation, but in witnessing divine elevation unfold before the very eyes of those who dismissed you. And when that ascension occurs, it stings them profoundly, especially because you never engaged in retaliation. You simply radiated brilliance, fostered growth, and maintained serenity as Providence intervened. Prepare yourselves for today. We delve into the transformative power of being misunderstood and why it's not a weakness but rather a divinely ordained weapon. Let's explore this concept further. Number 1, your intrinsic worth is not diminished by their inaccurate portrayals. It's safeguarded by them. They erroneously believe that misunderstanding you would diminish you in the eyes of others, yet the opposite transpires. Your value remains intact, shielded by their misinterpretations. What they fail to comprehend, they cannot exploit. This fundamental truth eludes many. For those who are divinely chosen, being misunderstood is not a form of punishment, but a protective layer bestowed by Providence. They speak of you as if they possess intimate knowledge of your story. They engage in gossip, twisting your silence into haughtiness, your benevolence into manipulation, and your fortitude into pride. Little do they realize they are inadvertently guarding your precious essence by misinterpreting it. They are inadvertently advertising a distorted version of you, repelling superficial individuals, which aligns perfectly with divine design. For the genuine souls, those attuned to spirit discernment and truth, will sense your presence before they decipher you completely. They will recognize a distinct quality within you even without possessing all the intricate details. However, the rest, the boisterous, tumultuous, and agenda-driven throng, will dismiss you, speak disparagingly of you, and remain blinded to your true nature. This blindness prevents them from accessing the profound depths that reside within you. You are not being rejected. Rather, you are being concealed in plain sight. Therefore, it is perilous to attempt to prove yourself to others. When you begin to explain your actions, your silences, your peace, or your divine calling to those who are determined to misunderstand you, you deplete sacred energy. You unveil what was never intended for them, and instead of elevating you, they endeavor to confine you within a framework that accommodates their limited perspective. But when you allow them to remain mistaken, when you cease the battle for clarity and embrace the spiritual protection inherent in confusion, something extraordinary occurs. You ascend quietly, authentically, while their falsehoods become ensnared in their own resentment. Your life becomes a powerful lesson. Your personal development serves as compelling evidence, and your inner peace transforms into the ultimate form of retribution. Thus, your worth is not diminished by their misjudgment. Rather, it is concealed, reserved for those with eyes capable of perceiving it. You are not inherently difficult to comprehend. You are simply not meant to be understood by everyone. Those destined to understand you will not require clarifications of rumors. They will recognize your authentic essence upon entering your presence. Allow them to remain perplexed. It serves as a safeguard. Number 2, clarity is a cherished gift, not an inherent entitlement, and you are not obligated to bestow it upon everyone. The majority operate under the assumption that clarity is owed to them. They believe that upon inquiring you should provide explanations, upon misunderstanding you should offer corrections, and upon spreading rumors you should issue retractions. But here's a candid truth. Clarity is a valuable privilege, not an inherent right. When you are divinely chosen, you must learn to embrace the reality of being misread, misheard, and misjudged, for not all individuals deserve unfettered access to your authentic truth. You are not obligated to provide exhaustive explanations regarding your healing process, your personal choices, your moments of silence, or your path of personal growth. Those genuinely destined to accompany you on your journey will inquire with humility, seeking understanding rather than asserting control. However, others do not genuinely seek clarity. They merely seek confirmation of their preconceived biases. They desire you to defend yourself, providing them with opportunities to distort your words and further ensnare you within their intricate web, perpetuating their state of confusion. Allowing them to remain perplexed is not a passive act. It is an assertion of power. They feign confusion when in reality they are offended that you refuse to grant them entry. You have ceased oversharing, stopped apologizing for your personal evolution, and abandoned the practice of diminishing yourself to maintain superficial harmony, and now they experience discomfort. Consequently, they label you as aloof, insincere, or unemotional. However, the underlying reality is that they have lost the version of you that they could easily manipulate, and instead of embracing growth, they resort to childish displays of discontent in the form of gossip. You must cultivate comfort in allowing others to engage in idle chatter. Let them speculate. Allow them to make assumptions. This is how Providence filters the room. The more you abstain from explaining yourself, the more readily others reveal their authentic beliefs about you. It is not your duty to rectify their narratives. Rather, it is your responsibility to safeguard your own energy. Each time you choose to withhold explanations, you preserve your personal power. You maintain your inner peace, a rare and sacred quality in this world. If someone truly seeks to comprehend you, they will approach with humility, free from judgment. However, those who demand answers accuse you of being difficult or pressure you to divulge your deepest secrets are merely seeking ammunition, not genuine understanding. Therefore, allow them to remain perplexed. Let them conjure their own fabricated versions of you. Those who are meant to know the real you will be guided by spirit, not by suspicion. All others can remain on the periphery, observing from a distance. That is where they were destined to be all along. Number 3, misunderstanding serves as a filter, separating the spiritually enlightened from those who are not. Being misunderstood is not always detrimental. It functions as a powerful sieve. It distinguishes those who are spiritually awakened from those who are merely inquisitive or shallow. If you are divinely chosen, you possess a depth that cannot be perceived through superficial thinking. Those lacking in spiritual sensitivity will fail to grasp your essence. They may perceive you as being difficult when you are simply exercising discernment. They may label you as antisocial when you are simply selective with your energy. This is not a reflection of your shortcomings. Rather, it is indicative of their spiritual illiteracy. You were never intended to be easily deciphered. The chosen ones possess layers of complexity. You have endured trials, healed in silence, and grown in secrecy. You do not reveal all your aspects readily. You do not engage in conversation for the sake of conversation. This can make others uneasy, particularly those who crave constant validation or believe they are entitled to access your inner world. They seek access, but not genuine connection. They desire information, but not intimate communion. When they fail to decipher you, they resort to labeling you rather than attempting to learn from you. Allowing them to misunderstand you serves as a form of protection, because if they cannot respect your silence, they will never be able to handle your authentic truth. If your energy overwhelms their spirit, that is their cue to exit. You do not require universal understanding. You only require those with spiritual vision to perceive you for who you truly are, and such individuals will rarely require extensive explanations. They will perceive your intentions before you articulate them. They will discern the nuances within your pauses. They will recognize the weight you carry without requiring you to display it openly. Those lacking in spiritual understanding will invariably attempt to diminish you into something they can define and control. By labeling you, they create a false sense of security. However, the moment you permit them to label you, you limit your own potential. Therefore, abstain from doing so. Allow the misunderstanding to occur. Let them grapple with their own assumptions. Their confusion represents their own individual lesson, not your personal emergency. You need not expend energy attempting to gain understanding from individuals who were never destined to accompany you on your journey. If they possessed spiritual awakening, they would have sensed your authentic essence before attempting to analyze your external persona. Therefore, continue to move forward, continue to grow, and continue to protect your layers of complexity. You were not created to be easily deciphered. You were created to be deeply respected, and only a select few will ever possess the vision to do so. Number 4. Their perception of you represents their own spiritual assignment, not yours to bear. When someone misunderstands you, the instinctive reaction is to rectify the situation, to offer explanations, to defend yourself, and to demonstrate that you are not who they perceive you to be. However, the truth is that their interpretation of you represents their own individual spiritual assignment, not one you are obligated to fulfill. It is not your responsibility to ensure their clear vision. Rather, it is their responsibility to confront the reasons behind their chosen perception of you. Individuals do not simply form opinions in a vacuum. They filter all information through their own emotional wounds, insecurities, and unresolved issues. Consequently, when they observe you and conclude that you are arrogant, intimidating, insincere, or excessive, they are not perceiving you accurately. Rather, they are projecting their own unresolved issues onto you as if onto a movie screen. The more you attempt to conform to their perceptions, the more power you grant to their dysfunction. Some individuals need to believe that you are the source of their problems because it distracts them from confronting their own flaws. It provides them with a temporary sense of superiority or control. It justifies their gossip, their coldness, and their envy. But consider this: the distorted perception they have created is not only inaccurate but divinely ordained, because they are now compelled to grapple with it. Your responsibility is not to make yourself palatable to everyone. Your responsibility is to embody your authentic truth and allow their inaccurate narratives to serve their intended purpose, to expose the aspects of themselves that remain unhealed. Some individuals must confront the discomfort of being mistaken about you. This serves as their spiritual classroom and their moment of self-reflection. If you intervene to correct their perception, you disrupt a lesson that Providence intended to impart to them. Allow them to believe whatever version of you their ego requires for survival. You are not accountable for their perception. Rather, you are accountable for maintaining alignment with your authentic self. Over time, your consistency, your personal growth, and your actions will speak more eloquently than any defense you could offer. You are not the person they claim you to be. And one day they will be compelled to confront that reality. Whether it humbles them, heals them, or haunts them, that is a matter between them and Providence. But it is not a burden for you to carry. Allow them to wrestle with their inner demons. Continue on your path. Number 5, allowing them to misunderstand you shatters their illusion of control. Some individuals do not misunderstand you inadvertently, rather they do so intentionally. They fabricate a version of you that aligns with their need to feel in control. They distort your words, assume your motivations, and disregard your authentic truth because they are not seeking clarity. They are seeking dominance. They seek to corner you into defending yourself, thereby manipulating how others perceive you. Their aim is not understanding, it is power. When you refuse to offer explanations, it provokes them not because they are genuinely confused, but because they are losing their grip on the situation. They cannot compel you to define yourself according to their terms. They cannot confine you within an identity that makes them feel secure about themselves. Your refusal to participate in their game renders them powerless. This is precisely what they cannot tolerate. Allowing them to misunderstand you disrupts their ego. It demonstrates that you are no longer susceptible to their emotional manipulation. They do not have the authority to judge, narrate, or control your life. By ceasing to explain yourself, you dismantle the image they attempted to create of you. This is why it feels like spiritual warfare, because in essence, it is. You are not merely remaining silent. You are dismantling the spell they attempted to cast over your identity. You are not being cold. You are being liberated. You are not being arrogant. You are untouchable by their tactics. The moment you cease attempting to clear your name and instead embrace your authentic truth, you deprive them of the one element they rely upon: reaction. Without your reaction, they are relegated to conversing with their own inner shadows. They cannot derive sustenance from your energy, they cannot distort your words, and they cannot twist your silence into guilt. You are not obligated to provide a breakdown of your soul merely to empower them. You need not diminish yourself to elevate their sense of self-worth. Allow them to stew in the version of you they have conjured. Let them engage in conflict with the illusion. You are not responsible for cleaning up the mess they have created out of their own insecurity. The moment you allow them to misunderstand you, You reclaim control not over them, but over your own self. This is the true victory, not disproving their claims, but refusing to be governed by their opinions. This embodies the essence of spiritual authority, quiet, steadfast, and undisturbed. Number 6, mystery safeguards the sacred aspects of your life. Mystery is not a deficiency, it is a divinely ordained protection. When others fail to comprehend you, they tend to retreat, and this distance becomes your shield. It is not rejection, it is preservation. What they cannot comprehend, they cannot manipulate. What they fear, they cannot exploit, and what they avoid, they cannot contaminate. Some may assume that because you do not openly display your life, you must lack depth or substance. However, in reality, you have learned that sacred elements lose their potency when entrusted to those who are careless. Thus, you have ceased excessive explanation. You have refrained from sharing your every action. You have become more selective in your interactions. Now you may appear mysterious to those who once believed they had access to you, but this mystery is not devoid of meaning. Rather, it is imbued with intention. Providence permits certain individuals to misunderstand you for a reason. It is not because you have failed to express yourself adequately. It is because what you possess is too valuable to be distributed indiscriminately. The sacred must be concealed before it can be revealed. Every hallowed aspect, your purpose, your processes, your anointing, necessitates periods of mystery before achieving public recognition. This serves to protect the weight of its significance. Individuals often fear what they cannot define. Consequently, when you shift, grow, evolve, or detach, they become uneasy, and instead of seeking deeper understanding, they withdraw. They may label you as different, aloof, or complicated, but in essence, they are conveying, "I no longer understand you, and it frightens me." This fear prompts them to maintain their distance, which in turn safeguards your inner peace. You are not being overlooked. You are not being ignored. You are being concealed in plain sight until the opportune moment arrives. Allow them to ponder. Allow them to speculate. The mystery is fulfilling its purpose. It is attracting only those with the right intentions and the right perspective. The rest will disqualify themselves through their own assumptions, and this is not a loss. It is a divinely ordained filter. Some things are too sacred to be explained to just anyone, and if your presence confounds others, so be it. Confusion prevents what is holy from being handled recklessly. Your mystery is not something to be rectified, it is something to be honored. It signifies that your life carries weight, and weight must be guarded, not paraded. Number 7, your silence compels them to confront their own inner shadows. When you cease explaining yourself to individuals who distort your words, something profound occurs. They are left to grapple with their own projections. The silence they misinterpret as weakness transforms into a mirror, and not everyone appreciates the reflection they encounter when compelled to face themselves without your voice to distract them. The majority do not truly know you. They have merely filled in the gaps with their own assumptions. They have decided that you are arrogant, aloof, insincere, overly intense, or difficult to decipher, not because of something you have done, but because of something they already believed. When you refuse to defend yourself, they no longer have you to blame. All that remains is the unsettling truth that perhaps, just perhaps, it was never about you at all. Your silence becomes their trigger. It exposes their insecurities. It prompts them to question why they feel uneasy around you, why they feel compelled to gossip about you, and why your inner peace so deeply offends them. If they possess spiritual maturity, they will begin to ask themselves genuine questions. Why did I assume the worst? What aspect of myself is reacting to this individual? What internal turmoil makes their existence feel like a threat? This is your impact. You did not retaliate. You did not attempt to prove a point. You did not draw them into a messy and unproductive exchange. You simply stood firm in your truth and allowed them to wrestle with their own darkness. This embodies spiritual warfare on a profound level. Some will remain entrenched in denial. They will reinforce their narrative to avoid confronting their own ego. Others, those who are prepared, will be humbled by your silence. They will learn and grow from it. They will begin to perceive themselves with greater clarity, perhaps for the first time. And it will not be because you convinced them, it will be because you held up the mirror and walked away. Not everyone will appreciate this. Your silence may portray you as the villain in their narrative for a period, but you were not placed here to cater to their comfort. You were sent to embody a frequency that shifts paradigms, sometimes loudly, sometimes quietly, but always with truth. And often the most resonant truth is the one that remains unspoken. Number 8, being misunderstood allows divine timing to unfold without obstruction. When you cease attempting to correct others' perceptions of you, something powerful occurs. You step aside and allow divine timing to take precedence. The majority are so eager to be seen, heard, and understood that they unwittingly sabotage the very processes intended to protect them. For those who are chosen, their story unfolds according to a different timetable. Misunderstanding serves as a form of delay, safeguarding the unfolding mission. When individuals believe they know who you are, they often act prematurely. They attempt to connect, manipulate, exploit, or dismiss you based on the fabricated version of you they have constructed in their minds. If you rush to clarify your essence, you open the door to individuals and situations that are not aligned with your divine purpose. You grant access to those who were not sent by providence, but rather by ego manipulation or malevolent spiritual forces. By allowing them to misunderstand you, you decelerate the process. You prevent them from interfering with your assignment. You deny them a clear blueprint to exploit. This misunderstanding serves as a divinely orchestrated smokescreen. While they are reacting to the false version of you, the authentic you is evolving behind the scenes, protected, undisturbed, and operating in silence. This is not about being secretive without reason. It is about aligning with divine timing. Providence is orchestrating events, preparing pathways, removing obstacles, and aligning support. If everyone possessed a complete understanding of your purpose or destination, they would attempt to interfere, motivated by envy, fear, or entitlement. Your perceived delay is not a form of punishment. It is divine choreography. Your rise is governed by a specific rhythm. And when others misinterpret you, it allows providence to orchestrate events without interference. This eliminates false alliances, premature exposure, and unnecessary conflicts, facilitating a harmonious and divinely guided unfolding. Therefore, embrace the misunderstanding. Allow them to propagate false narratives. Let them engage in laughter, speculation, and idle chatter. All they are accomplishing is slowing their own progress in accessing the real you. Meanwhile, you are being positioned for something their version of you could never handle. This explains why the chosen ones often appear delayed in fulfilling others' expectations, for divine timing does not conform to human opinions. It patiently awaits the moment of perfect readiness, and being misunderstood provides the necessary space for its unobstructed operation. Number 9, those who are misunderstood often become legends because they were not designed for the present moment alone. Experiencing misunderstanding often feels akin to rejection, but in reality it signifies that you are ahead of your time. History bears witness to the mistreatment of those who were later celebrated. Prophets were mocked. Visionaries were ignored. Revolutionaries were exiled. They were too bold, too unconventional, too clear in a world that favored obscurity. However, it was this very misunderstanding that etched their names into the annals of history. They were not crafted solely for the present moment. They were designed for what followed. When you are divinely chosen, your very presence challenges established norms. Your thoughts, your energy, your essence all defy conventional categorization. When others fail to label you, they experience fear, and it is this fear that prompts them to attempt to diminish you. This cycle has persisted throughout the ages, but the realization they fail to grasp is this: each time they fail to understand you, they contribute to the amplification of your legacy. You are not seeking validation. You are operating in accordance with your purpose. You are not here to impress others. You are here to shift the very fabric of existence. The chosen are not meant to assimilate. They are destined to be remembered, and this remembrance is not born from applause. It is forged in the crucible of resistance. Individuals do not always recognize greatness in its nascent stages. It is too raw, too unfamiliar, and too threatening to the status quo. Consequently, they mock it, mistrust it, and mislabel it. However, with the passage of time, as the dust settles and the clamor subsides, truth emerges in its full glory. It is during this epoch that the misunderstood ascend to iconic status. It is during this epoch that individuals proclaim, "We failed to grasp it then, but now we understand." Your misunderstanding is not a setback. It is a divinely orchestrated process that stretches you beyond the confines of the present. While others are preoccupied with deciphering you, you are constructing something timeless, something impervious to gossip, rejection, or assumptions. Allow them to converse. Allow them to ponder. One day they will recount tales of the very individual they once disregarded. Your name will transcend their doubts. Your work will eclipse their dismissals, for you were not designed for applause. You were designed for impact, and impact invariably leaves an enduring mark long after the crowd has dispersed. Number 10, experiencing misunderstanding preserves your freedom to evolve without constraint. There is a subtle blessing inherent in being misunderstood. It safeguards your ability to grow without interference. When individuals presume to have deciphered you, they establish expectations. They affix labels. They construct boxes within which they expect you to reside, and these boxes not only limit their perception of you, they also exert pressure on you to remain static. If others were privy to the full extent of your divine calling too early, many would attempt to freeze you in place, not out of love, but out of fear or convenience. They would pressure you to embody the version of yourself that provides them with comfort, the version that does not challenge their ego, their position, or their illusion of control. They would wield your identity like a leash, and before long you would find yourself trapped in the performance of who they believe you to be, rather than becoming who you are truly destined to be. Misunderstanding shatters this trap. It empowers you to move discreetly, shift direction, and transform repeatedly without being confined by the expectations of others, because they cannot define you. They cannot restrict you, and because they are perplexed, they cannot predict your next maneuver. This is power. This is freedom. You were not designed for stagnation. So to wrap things up, remember that being misunderstood isn't a curse, but a blessing in disguise. It's a shield protecting your true worth, a filter separating genuine connections from superficial ones, and a catalyst for your own extraordinary growth and divine timing. Embrace the mystery of your journey, knowing that your true power lies not in seeking validation, but in radiating your authentic brilliance. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced the transformative power of being misunderstood? Share your stories. Ask your questions, or simply join the conversation in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future insights and explorations. Let's continue this journey of self-discovery together. Welcome, illuminated souls. Never underestimate the seismic shift a fully realized spirit can trigger in one still clinging to the fraying threads of a borrowed belief system. Let me share a fascinating truth validated by science. Our bodies register fear and awe almost identically. A racing heart, shallow breaths, a surge of adrenaline. The crucial distinction: fear depletes, awe transforms. Now envision this: someone encounters you, a beacon of authentic power, and for a fleeting instant witnesses your totality. Not your curated image, not your achievements, but the raw voltage of your spirit. It's akin to staring directly into the sun unshielded. They were utterly unprepared for such profound exposure. People anticipate meeting talent, intellect, perhaps even captivating charm. But genuine spiritual strength that exists on an entirely different plane. It's absent from photographs. It doesn't solicit validation online, and it certainly lacks a conspicuous warning label. They assumed you were merely another individual in the room. They remained blissfully unaware of the potent inner force you carry, one that evokes inexplicable unease in those whose intentions are less than pure. Without a word, without a gesture, they felt it. A quiet, unwavering resonance that sent their insecurities scattering like startled shadows when the dawn arrives. And here's the remarkable truth. While they frantically attempt to decipher the source of their sudden disequilibrium, you stand serenely, perhaps sipping your beverage, wondering at their discomfited expression. News flash. They have glimpsed something spectral. They simply failed to recognize that the apparition was their own fractured, unsustainable persona, exposed by the luminosity of your spirit. Firstly, your inherent truth unveiled the vulnerabilities they've meticulously concealed for years. That fleeting exposure to your spiritual magnitude triggered a profound fissure within their carefully constructed facade. It wasn't a gentle awakening. It was a brutal dismantling of illusions they had painstakingly cultivated. They've invested considerable energy in projecting an image of unassailable confidence, unwavering control, and superior intellect. They diligently reinforced the external appearance of invincibility, while discreetly addressing the inherent flaws within. However, the instant they encountered your presence, the latent truth of their being began to seep through the cracks they had desperately attempted to conceal. Exacerbating their distress was the unintentional nature of your exposure. You weren't actively probing. You weren't issuing challenges. You weren't laying subtle traps for them to unwittingly stumble into. Your spirit simply exists in its unadulterated form, and truth inherently dismantles any construct built upon deceit. That's what they experienced, the slow-burning humiliation of being completely seen, stripped of all pretense, exposed as the vulnerable individual concealed beneath the mask. For someone whose entire sense of self hinges upon that constructed facade, it feels akin to existential obliteration. It's not that your strength overwhelmed them, it revealed them. And revelation proves far more destabilizing, for one can defend against an attack. Yet when one is seen, truly seen, resistance becomes futile. There's no tangible target to engage with, no individual to hold accountable, no viable means of reinstating the facade without openly acknowledging its artifice. Hence their disproportionate response. They weren't combating you. They were grappling with the reflection you inadvertently presented. For them, that glimpse was terrifying. For you, it's merely your authentic way of navigating the world without artifice, without diluting your essence to appease others. You have undertaken the necessary inner work. You have navigated the crucible of transformative pain, emerging not unscathed, but rebuilt into an unyielding force. Consequently, your presence possesses a profound gravity. Not negatively burdensome, but weighty with authentic substance. They're accustomed to associating with individuals whose foundations are hollow. You, on the other hand, are undeniably solid. They departed from that encounter feeling inexplicably depleted, unsettled, perhaps even harboring inexplicable resentment. Yet at a subconscious level, they understood the underlying cause. You didn't merely showcase who you are. You revealed the profound discrepancy between your authentic self and the persona they desperately attempt to project. And for some, that disparity is simply intolerable. Secondly, they recognized your access to a power source beyond their manipulation. Upon encountering your spiritual fortitude, one of their initial realizations was your connection to a power they can neither corrupt, confine, nor exploit for their personal gain. They've spent the majority of their lives functioning within environments where influence hinges upon identifying and manipulating vulnerabilities. They possess a thorough understanding of the mechanics of manipulation, employing flattery to induce subservience, leveraging guilt to secure compliance, subtly inflating egos to maintain control. It's a game they've honed to perfection, and it has proven remarkably effective on almost everyone they encounter. However, with you, that carefully orchestrated game faltered before it even commenced. They were unable to establish a foothold because the power that animates you isn't predicated on external validation, fear, or fleeting approval. You operate outside the framework of transactional exchanges they've come to rely upon. Your strength emanates from a source that remains impervious to coercion, unattainable through bribery, and resistant to external suppression. That realization triggered a subtle, almost tangible sense of frustration. They found themselves confronting an individual who remained unresponsive to their customary control mechanisms. It's not a matter of stubbornness or intransigence. It's that your internal compass is immune to external directives. The energy you embody isn't integrated into their system, rendering it unhackable. They can't exploit your vulnerabilities because you have already confronted them. They can't tempt you with superficial rewards because you aren't driven by the shallow desires they believe everyone covets. They can't intimidate you with threats because you possess unwavering clarity regarding the source of your protection. And that aspect, above all others, provokes their unease. You operate from a foundation that remains inaccessible to them, let alone susceptible to their influence. They're accustomed to individuals either resisting until their resolve crumbles or capitulating immediately under sufficient pressure. But your resistance defies their expectations. You don't engage with manipulation through force. You simply disengage altogether. It's akin to extending a rope only to discover it remains ungrasped. That's the moment they grasped their inability to ensnare you because you never occupied their arena to begin with. That realization stung because if they lack the capacity to influence you, they forfeit their ability to control the narrative surrounding you. And if they can't control the narrative, they can no longer safeguard the constructed persona they've meticulously cultivated within their sphere of influence. That constitutes the ultimate defeat. Thirdly, your energy compelled their inner demons to surface. Your mere presence achieved what countless words could not. It forced repressed aspects of their psyche to ascend to conscious awareness. They've devoted years to concealing resentment, envy, insecurity, and covert malice beneath layers of disarming charm, manufactured politeness, or feigned humility. In the company of most people, they can maintain control over these darker inclinations. However, when in your proximity that control faltered and the aspects of themselves they had desperately attempted to suppress began to manifest. It wasn't prompted by confrontation or direct accusation. It was simply a consequence of your spirit's inherent nature. Your energy is intrinsically pure, and purity inherently exposes impurity. It's as if the atmosphere surrounding you actively resists the perpetuation of falsehoods. Without any conscious effort, you dismantle disguises because your spirit refuses to align with anything inauthentic. Consequently, individuals experience a sense of inexplicable discomfort. They become defensive, agitated, or excessively critical of you, failing to recognize that the source of their unease lies in the reflection of themselves they're suddenly forced to confront. The truth is, most individuals can coexist peacefully with their inner demons, provided no external light shines brightly enough to disturb their slumber, but your light transcends a gentle glow. It's the kind that penetrates the darkest recesses, and the entities lurking within those shadows recoil from exposure. They resist, they lash out, they scramble to protect the established identity, because once those concealed motives are brought into the open, the carefully maintained facade inevitably collapses. Compounding their distress is your refusal to engage in the games they typically play. You aren't striving to win them over. You aren't seeking to prove your worth, and you aren't succumbing to the manipulative emotional bait they present. You are simply being your authentic self, unyielding, grounded, and rooted in your truth. And that only accelerates the process. The more genuine you remain, the more their masks slip and the more their internal conflicts manifest externally. That explains their potential reaction of hostility or sudden detachment. It's not necessarily driven by hatred, it's fueled by an inability to tolerate the transformative effect your presence has upon them. You didn't create their demons, but you did compel them into the light. And for someone who has dedicated their entire existence to keeping those demons concealed, such exposure feels like a protracted, agonizing burn. Fourthly, they witnessed that your trials didn't break you. They forged you. They scrutinized you, anticipating the sight of someone worn down by adversity. They assumed your scars would serve as emblems of defeat, that your eyes would reflect the dullness of someone who barely persevered. Instead, they encountered the antithesis of their expectations. You were sharper, more lucid, and possessing an unshakable resolve that defied their preconceived notions. That realization profoundly unsettled them. Individuals who have never truly grappled with profound pain often mistakenly believe it inevitably weakens the spirit. They presume that loss permanently drains one's vitality, that betrayal irrevocably shatters trust, and that hardship permanently distorts one's character. Their reasoning stems from the fact that even minor wounds inflict lasting damage upon them. However, you have weathered tempests of such magnitude that they have stripped you bare, reducing you to your fundamental essence. Instead of succumbing to destruction, those trials have reforged you into something entirely novel. Each ordeal became the heat of the forge. Each betrayal became the hammer shaping your resolve. Each loss became the chisel carving away the extraneous, and while the process undoubtedly inflicted pain, it simultaneously incinerated fear, dependence, and self-doubt. What remained was your purest iteration, resolute, focused, and resistant to external pressures. This explains the distinct quality of your presence. You're not merely a survivor. You're an individual who underwent profound transformation within the crucible of adversity. What intimidates them isn't simply your inherent strength. It's your demonstrated ability to navigate the very challenges they desperately attempt to avoid. They instinctively know that should life ever afflict them with the same intensity it has afflicted you, their capacity to recover remains uncertain. However, you not only recovered but emerged from the ordeal possessing wisdom, discernment, and an authentic authority that defies imitation. That proves particularly intimidating to individuals whose confidence relies heavily on the maintenance of favorable circumstances. Your scars aren't emblems of shame, they serve as testaments to resilience. Proof that you have confronted darkness and emerged unscathed. Proof that you have endured betrayal and refused to succumb to bitterness. Proof that you have experienced loss and persevered nonetheless. And such proof can't be acquired through monetary means borrowed from others or passively absorbed within the confines of comfort. It's earned through arduous immersion in the depths of adversity. Consequently, when they perceived you, they weren't merely observing a strong individual. They were witnessing irrefutable evidence that life's most devastating blows need not constitute the definitive end. For them, the truth is both awe-inspiring and terrifying because it diminishes the validity of their self-imposed limitations and excuses for remaining broken. And not everyone is prepared to confront that reality. Fifthly, your invulnerability to their customary tactics rendered them powerless. They swiftly discerned that the tactics they typically employ to manipulate and subdue others proved ineffective against you. Gossip, slander, intimidation, betrayal. These constitute the arsenal they've meticulously honed over the years, the tools they rely upon to maintain their dominance and suppress those they deem beneath them. They've witnessed these methods dismantle individuals, ruin reputations, and compel even the most resilient personalities into submission. But when they directed these tactics toward you, they encountered an impenetrable barrier. It wasn't that you remained oblivious to their machinations. You were fully aware. You detected the subtle insults, the whispered rumors, the deliberate attempts to sow discord and instill doubt within the minds of others regarding your character. You sensed the shift in energy when they endeavored to isolate you or undermine your self-assurance. However, your reaction defied their expectations. You didn't succumb to panic and hastily defend your reputation. You didn't crumble under the weight of their falsehoods. You denied them the satisfaction of witnessing your distress. That's the defining characteristic of someone possessing spiritual armor. There's an invisible shield surrounding you that deflects their attacks. It's not that the malicious intentions never reach your awareness, it's that they fail to penetrate your core being. You possess unwavering clarity regarding your authentic self and the source of your strength. That self-assurance renders you invulnerable in ways that infuriate those accustomed to exerting power over others through fear and manipulation. Their intimidation tactics prove ineffective because you harbor no fear of forfeiting their approval. Their betrayal fails to devastate you because your trust isn't rooted in them in the first place. Their gossip fails to define you because your identity isn't contingent upon public opinion. And each time they recognize their inability to inflict emotional damage, their sense of control diminishes. For individuals of their ilk, dominance constitutes everything. If they can't dictate the thoughts, feelings, and actions of others, they experience a sense of irrelevance. And you have effectively demonstrated that. You have rendered them insignificant to your inner peace. That's why your presence provokes such profound frustration. It's akin to wielding a weapon that has always proven effective only to discover its sudden uselessness. Exacerbating their distress is the realization that they can't upgrade their arsenal to overcome your defenses. There's no hidden weakness, no secret passage, no ingenious maneuver that will yield the desired outcome, because your protection doesn't originate from strategic planning. It stems from spiritual alignment, and nothing within their repertoire of manipulative tactics can breach that. Sixthly, they sensed the magnitude of your ancestral legacy. They may have lacked the capacity to articulate it, but they undeniably felt it. An unseen force enveloped you, something too substantial and ancient to be shaken. They weren't merely confronting you. Your presence resonated with echoes of generations past, the strength of ancestors who fought battles you'll never have to wage because they have already secured victory. That form of backing isn't ostentatious or assertive, yet its presence is undeniable. It manifests in your quiet authority as you enter a room, in the grounded nature of your spirit, even amidst chaos. Some navigate life solely on the strength of their own willpower. You navigate life imbued with the strength of those who preceded you. Individuals whose prayers continue to envelop you, who persevered through hardship and injustice so that their lineage could stand taller. Each step you take is upon ground cleared brick by the resilience of your ancestors. That explains the seemingly effortless manner in which certain doors open for you. That explains why even during moments of adversity you never fully succumb. You possess an unshakable foundation beneath you. When they encountered that force, it was akin to standing before an insurmountable wall. They may have attempted to challenge you, undermine your confidence, or sow seeds of doubt, but something within you remained unyielding. That resistance wasn't arrogance. It was the natural consequence of being so deeply rooted that superficial attacks couldn't penetrate. They weren't merely engaging with you in that moment. They were encountering the accumulated force of everything that has sustained your lineage, everything that has carried you to this point. That explains why some individuals struggle to comprehend their inability to overpower you. They're accustomed to exploiting vulnerabilities, but with you, no such weakness exists. Your shield was forged long before your arrival. Even if they dismiss spiritual concepts, they can sense it, the weight, the depth, the unspoken authority. And at a subconscious level, they recognize that such power can't be stolen, faked, or replicated. What they sensed wasn't merely your personal strength. It was history, sacrifice, and divine favor standing as an army at your back. And regardless of their desires, they are incapable of competing with that. Seventhly, they struggled to comprehend your capacity to navigate life without fear. They couldn't grasp the manner in which you moved, calm, deliberate, and devoid of the pervasive tension that afflicts most individuals. They're accustomed to individuals exercising caution to the point of compromising their values, constantly calculating how to safeguard their position, their relationships, and their resources. Fear of loss serves as the most effective means of control, and for them it's their most reliable weapon. But with you, that weapon proves useless. You conduct yourself in a manner that proclaims your unwavering trust in your source of sustenance, independent of any individual job or circumstance. That unnerves them because fear has always been their most dependable instrument. They can compel silence by threatening reputations, They can ensure obedience by dangling money or opportunities as incentives. They can prevent departures by wielding the threat of abandonment. But when they attempt these tactics on you, they encounter nothing to latch onto. They can't dangle what you don't desperately desire. They can't threaten to take away what you are willing to relinquish. It's not recklessness. It's unwavering confidence in the fact that your sustenance isn't contingent upon them. They can't sever your provision because they never supplied it in the first place. That's the aspect they find intolerable. They're accustomed to assuming the role of gatekeeper. But with you, there's no intermediary required to access divine grace. You inhabit a reality where your worth, your peace, and your destiny aren't contingent upon their approval or access. That degree of faith is alien to them because they have never known life without being tethered to something fragile and impermanent. They've consistently devoted their energy to protecting their position, clinging to control, and pursuing security in ephemeral possessions. You have come to understand that anything susceptible to loss wasn't truly yours to begin with. Consequently, you don't cling. You trust, and that renders you invulnerable in ways they can't emulate. When they observe you navigating life without fear, they are compelled to confront an uncomfortable truth. If fear constitutes their sole means of control, then they lack the capacity to influence you. That realization undermines their entire paradigm because without fear, their power doesn't merely weaken. It vanishes completely. And for someone whose identity hinges upon maintaining control, that realization proves utterly terrifying. Eighthly, your serenity spoke louder than their chaos. They directed everything within their arsenal toward you. Accusations, manufactured drama, distorted narratives, subtle insults, yet you remained unperturbed. You didn't become ensnared in their vortex. You didn't elevate your voice to compete with theirs, nor did you rush to defend your reputation in a desperate attempt to reclaim your image in their eyes. You remained anchored, and that was the single contingency they failed to anticipate. Individuals of their ilk thrive on eliciting reactions. Chaos serves as their preferred medium. If they can provoke you into flailing, stumbling, or losing your footing, they emerge victorious. But when they encountered your composure, they found themselves swinging wildly at an immovable object. That form of serenity isn't passive. It represents power in its purest form. It's the strength born from the unwavering conviction that you aren't at the mercy of someone else's narrative, while they sought to draw you into their emotional tempest. You remained rooted in something far greater than their cacophony. That stability spoke volumes, communicating a truth they desperately attempted to suppress. They never possessed control over your mind. Your silence wasn't submission, it was mastery. You understood that engaging with their chaos would only perpetuate its cycle. You recognized that each time you resisted mirroring their energy, you deprived their performance of its intended audience. Bereft of a sparring partner, their fury began to appear desperate. Lacking a target to defend against, their accusations began to sound hollow. They sought a battle, but you refused to step onto their chosen battlefield. And here lies the aspect that truly destabilized them. Your composure highlighted the magnitude of their chaos. Standing in proximity to your serenity accentuated the loudness, the disorderliness, and the instability of their behavior. It's one thing to shout amidst a crowd of shouters, but quite another to shout in the presence of someone who refuses to raise their voice. In that moment, they witnessed themselves with a clarity they found unsettling. What they experienced wasn't merely frustration, it was defeat. Not because you overpowered them through force, but because you demonstrated your lack of need to do so. When they recognized their inability to disrupt your center, they simultaneously acknowledged the evaporation of their influence over you. And for someone who equates power with the degree of control they exert over others, that loss reverberated deafeningly. Ninthly, they recognized their inability to thrive in the environment that sustains you. They grasped it almost immediately. Your strength isn't contingent upon your location or the individuals you associate with. Your strength accompanies you. It's not tethered to a particular place, position, or social circle. Whether surrounded by support or standing completely isolated, your inherent atmosphere remains consistent. That realization unnerved them. They understood that your stability isn't circumstantial, it's intrinsic. You don't derive power from your surroundings. You embody it, and it transforms the space you occupy. For them, survival has always hinged upon cultivating favorable conditions, being among circles where they can dominate, within environments where they can manipulate, in places that satiate their egos. They depend on external factors to remain afloat. If their audience, their influence, or their safety net were to be stripped away, they would begin to crumble. Consequently, when they caught a glimpse of your inner world, they recognized their inability to inhabit it. It's too pure for deception, too unwavering for manipulation, too resilient for fear to take root. It wasn't envy directed toward your confidence. It was the profound understanding that they can't breathe within the atmosphere you inhabit. Your spirit resonates at a higher frequency, one that demands truth, clarity, and integrity. For someone who operates in shadows, that environment feels suffocating. They would have to relinquish too much of themselves simply to function within it. And shedding those aspects would necessitate abandoning the very tools they have employed to survive. You don't merely adapt to challenges, you emerge stronger from them. You can navigate situations that would utterly break them, not because you remain unaffected, but because you are rooted in something unshakable. That's why fire doesn't consume you. That's why storms don't drown you. So in essence, what we've explored is the profound impact your authentic self can have on those still clinging to outdated beliefs and manufactured personas. It's about how your inner strength, your resilience, your very being can act as a mirror, revealing vulnerabilities and prompting a discomfort that's ultimately a call for transformation. It's a reminder that your journey, your scars, your very presence are powerful testaments to the unwavering spirit within. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever experienced anything similar? What resonated with you the most? Leave a comment below. Ask a question or share your own insights. Let's get a conversation going. And if you enjoyed this exploration and want to delve deeper into topics of spiritual growth, self-awareness, and authentic living, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future discussions. Until next time, keep shining your light, shining your light, shining your light, shining your light, shining your